Photoshop is a great software tool to use to create a simple artwork design to be screen printed. First, you have to start with a new canvas by coming up to File, New. Now, it is extremely important that you design the artwork to be the exact print size or larger. So in our case, we're going to go on our 11 by 13 transfer sheet. We're going to make the resolution actually 500 in this case. 300 dpi is your standard high resolution, but the higher the resolution isn't really going to hurt you. It's only going to help you in case things have to be resized. And lastly, the color mode. It's very important that you make it CMYK if the artwork is going to be screen printed. With screen printing, we are not going to print the exact colors of what's displayed on the monitor. When it comes to digital printing, you are going to use CMYK colors, just like your inkjet printer, to create a full color image. But when you design the color mode, you typically want it to be RGB for digital printing and CMYK for screen printing because it makes it easier to separate the colors. This is extremely important. Now, if you were to accidentally leave this on RGB color and click OK, you can come up to Image Mode and change it to CMYK color. Now, it's going to warn you a couple times that you're going to have to merge layers and so forth. You don't necessarily have to do that, but if you ever forget to not be in CMYK color mode, come up to Mode and then change it from here. Now, another thing that you'll actually sometimes need to do is come up to image size, or canvas size. Now, these are very, very important to understand the difference. First of all, you have the canvas size. Canvas size changes what we're designing in currently. So we can make this 14, but if we actually were to shrink it, we're going to actually crop part of the actual image within the canvas. And again, it'll warn us that we're going to do so, and from there. Now, whenever you adjust the canvas size, it is also adjusting the image size. Now, let's give you an example of exactly how this will work, because the image size is different. It is the actual image within the canvas. So we can drop our soccer ball on here and stretch it. And if we change the image size, the soccer ball is going to change as well as the canvas. So we'll make this, we'll make it a little more drastic at 14. And as you can see, the ball and the canvas both increased in size. But if I were to shrink the canvas size back to 11 by 13, it's going to warn me. And then you can see that only the canvas shrank, not everything within the image. Again, it is extremely important that you start with everything the exact size that you're going to design it at. Now, a little bit of an overview of what all we're going to use. So first of all, within File, you're going to use New, and you're going to use Save As. Again, these are the tools you're going to use most often to create a simple screen print design. Within Edit, step forward and backward will be your good friend, as well as Command Z is the actual shortcut. And speaking of shortcuts, if you come down here, you can actually click on the keyboard shortcuts menu, and it'll display of how you can use shortcuts such as cut, copy, paste, undo, and many others. The shortcut tools will help you be more efficient when creating a design within Photoshop. Also within Edit, you're going to use the Transform tool. And again, we'll go over these in more detail. This is a handy tool not only for images, but text, especially if you need to warp the text so that it has an arch or other effect. Again, within Image mode, you're going to, as long as you have it on CMYK, you will not adjust it. The adjustments are mainly for photos, and they're not necessarily going to be used very often in screen printing. Again, image and canvas size. Now the layer tools, all of these tools we have open in our layers window over here. So again, everything that's within this toolbar is also within the window. The selection, sometimes you'll use the color range. In our example, we're not going to necessarily use it. It's better for using to remove a background color and actually switching colors or separating colors. And again, the last ones you're really going to use maybe view or window just to change what all you see over here. As far as window goes, we have our history toolbar to show us all of our updates that we've made to our design. And our character window allows us to change the size of the text, the spacing between lines, and the actual space between letters. So let's start with a new design. So we have our layer here. Now, over here we have our main toolbars. We'll use the majority of these in this example to show you exactly when you're going to use them and how they work. First thing we're going to use is the paint bucket tool. Now, the paint bucket tool will color overlay a selected area. Now, to change the color of the paint bucket, that essentially the color that's going to be overlaid, you want to come down here to our color palette, and with our color picker, we have a few different options. First of all, you can move it around here and find the color that you want. This can be a little bit harder than you think, and especially when we're using CMYK colors, realize CMYK will not produce the true color that RGB will, like what we see. CMYK colors are more dull. And again, we're not going to print the exact color. We primarily just color separate when using CMYK. So a good option here would be to use these to be the exact range. For instance, if we were going to color separate this, we want one of these values to be 100% and the other three to be 0. So if we wanted to be 100% cayenne, which is a light blue, we would make that 100% and the rest of these 0. You can also enter RGB values, a hex number, and another handy tool is the eyedropper tool. So if we have an artwork already on the palette, here we'll drop the soccer ball back on here, enlarge it, and let's say we wanted the color to be black, this exact black of the soccer ball. We can use the eyedropper tool, it'll find that exact black, and then we can click OK. And again, if we wanted to do our overlay of our background, we could do it here, but again, it's going to make that soccer ball look weird. So we'll delete, again, the soccer ball layer. It is a good idea to give yourself some type of solid background. Now, transparent totally works. You can work in this transparent background, but a lot of times you're going to add white and so forth, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. So, and if you ever want to change this color, again, you can use the paint bucket tool, or you can simply double click on the color, and you can actually change it from there. So we're going to actually work in transparent for now. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add text. Let's add Lakewood. Now, when it comes to text, you need to actually select the text tool to edit it. Now that we're clicked on it, you can see the dash. We can change the font right here to a wide range of fonts. You can also import different fonts that you download online. You can choose if it's going to be bold, italic, and so forth. You can also choose the font size. Now, the color that you choose of the font or the text is done a few different ways. You could do it right here. If I have it selected, I could change it to a different color and go from there. Now, again, the character tools are right here. So if I wanted to change the spacing between each letter, I can do so by just changing some of the values within here. If we had multiple lines of text, we can do the same. A lot of these tools you can also use essentially in the transform. So if we come up to edit, transform, we have a few different options here. Scale will make it larger or smaller. Skew will allow us to bend it. Rotate it will obviously allow us to rotate it. You also have these rotations. So if you actually wanted to go exactly 180 degrees or 90 degrees, or actually flipped horizontally or vertically, you can do it from there. Again, these transform tools are very, very handy. A big thing to remember when it comes to scaling or really using any of these tools, if you hold down Shift while you drag, it stays proportional. You can see that we are staying essentially the same proportional width and height, but if we don't hold down Shift and we were to move it, you could see we are very unproportional. Now, if I don't like that I'm unproportional, all I have to do is hit Command Z and go back. Or we can come back here to our history and go back to the original move. Okay, so in our example, let's go ahead and apply a warp. Now, when it comes to warping, you can only do this to text and not images, and you'll see why. Warping essentially allows us to give the text a different look and effect. We can make it arched, we can give it a fisheye, among many other different effects. So for instance, here's the arch tool. Now, you can see it arched the text. We have a lot more variables that we can control as far as the way this arch actually looks. It's really primarily in this bend for this example. So if we change this to half of between 50% to 25%, you can see the bend is much less drastic. So the big key is to first select which type of warp you want to apply, and then from there change the bend. So again, we'll go to a different type of, go to this arch upper. And again, you can see that we got bigger in the middle and smaller on the sides. And again, if we wanted to change the bend, it's going to change it essentially in the middle. We also have a little bit of a free-form ability as well to make the same adjustments. These are very, very handy tools to remember how to use. Now, we're going to put another line of text at the bottom. If I want to have it be pretty much exactly the same, a good idea would be to come over to your layers and hit duplicate layer. And all that's going to do is make a copy for us, and I can bring it down here, come to my text. Let's change this to soccer, and this example, let's go back and warp, and we'll apply none. Apply that transformation, go from there. Now, for the word soccer, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to put a box behind it. So I'm going to come to my shape tool. I'm going to actually come to this rounded rectangle tool. We're going to make a small box around the word soccer. Now, you can see that this box is overlaying over the text soccer. That's because this layer is above the soccer layer. If we bring it underneath, it is no longer there, but because they're both black, we can't see them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this color red, and actually for the sake of example, we'll make this 100 and the rest 0. Now I have a nice, very different color between the two. If we zoom in by hitting Command plus, you can see we have the text and so forth. Now, a very important tool that you'll use in the toolbar as well is the Move tool. The Move tool allows us to move whatever layer or layers we're selected on. So in this case, I'm selected on the shape. I can move the shape around. If I'm selected with the shape and the text, I can move both around at the exact same time. Now, what we want to do is we want to put the word soccer in the exact center of this box. So what we'll do is we'll bring our box down to the same level as soccer, and we'll come up, as we're on the Move tool, if you hit Command A, it selects the entire canvas and the layer you're on. So currently, we're exactly where we want to be, and by using these alignment tools, you can choose exactly where the text or the image is aligned on the canvas. So in this example, we're going to center it in the exact middle, and if we actually wanted to bring it in the middle of the middle, we click here, and you can see it goes there. Undo that. Now, let's do the exact same thing with the soccer text, so that the soccer text is in the exact middle of the box. Again, we'll come to here, and so forth. Now, you can also, let's say we wanted this to be all centered within one another. If we select both layers at the same time, you can see we have this option here where we can make them essentially come together, which we already had essentially. So if you select multiple layers, you can do very similar things within just themselves, not necessarily the entire canvas. All right, let's show you how to use the Magic Wand tool now. So we're going to use the Magic Wand tool to essentially eliminate the soccer text here so that it's a negative space and we let the shirt color come through to create this color. Now, in order to be able to edit this, first of all, the magic wand, you can only have one layer selected at a time. So we'll just be on the soccer layer, and you can see we actually can select each letter within here pretty easily. And the actual selection that we're using with the magic wand is all based around color. So the fact that we have black against magenta, it's a pretty easy color to differentiate. If this was black and this was gray, it'd be a lot harder for the magic wand. Now, how much the magic wand actually selects is all based around tolerance. The higher the tolerance, the more it selects. The highest you really want to take this is about 200. It's not on a 0 to 100 scale. So if we actually were to go to 140 and we were to actually choose this, it's going to select a little bit more than just the black. It's going to start selecting a little bit of the magenta because the tolerance is so high. But if we were to make this 5, again, because the black and magenta are so different, it's going to select barely just that. So again, you really want to adjust the tolerance before making your actual selection. In our case, most of the time you're going to be around 40 is actually going to be pretty standard and work pretty well. Now again, for us to be able to eliminate this soccer, we actually need to merge it with this layer and rasterize the layer. Now, rasterize something means to convert it to a bitmap. We are currently working in Photoshop. Photoshop, if you zoom way in, and we're again at a very high resolution, uses tiny little pixels, essentially dots, to create artwork. Because we created our text and our shape within Photoshop, we essentially are creating, in a way, a vector image because it is scalable without losing any image quality before we rasterize it. Once you rasterize something, or if we had been working with a bitmap image all along, it uses pixels right from the get-go, and it cannot be resized without losing some image quality. So, we are going to convert this to a bitmap to give us more control over what we can edit. So if we're going to go ahead and merge these two together. So we're going to select both layers. And again, you essentially can select one layer, hold the Shift key down, and select another layer. Now, what we highly suggest is to create a backup of these layers so that if we ever need to re-edit them, it's not a big deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down to our layer and we're going to create a new group. And it's going to create this group. And if we select these two layers, we can then put it in the group. And now we have these layers within a group. We want to do this because it's going to make things real clean and it's going to allow us to duplicate groups very easily. So we're going to actually right-click on the group and we're going to hit Duplicate Group. And essentially all that's going to do is it's going to create a backup of exactly the same layers. Now, to choose which layer you see and which you don't, you have this eye tool. If you click on the eye, it no longer becomes visible. Now again, we had 2 of these, so you can see that's why that didn't disappear. Okay, now that we have this group, let's go ahead and rasterize the layer. Again, convert it to a bitmap so we have more editing capabilities. We're going to do that by right-clicking on the layer and coming to Convert Smart Object. Once you've converted the layer to a smart object, you can then rasterize it. Again, by right-clicking and coming down to Rasterize Layer. This layer is now much more editable as far as we can come up to Image, Adjustments, and we can change the brightness and all these other things. Again, the adjustments are a great tool. When somebody says they edited something in Photoshop and enhanced it, most of the time they're taking an image and they're adding some of these adjustments to make an image or particularly photo, again why it's called Photoshop, and make it nicer, or essentially give it a different effect. Now that we have our layer rasterized, I can select the text within here using the magic wand again, and again we have the tolerance at 40, and from here we're just going to delete it. There are many different things you can do once you've had it selected with the magic wand. We could essentially move it from here, but in our case we're actually just going to delete it. Now again, it essentially created this nice negative space for us to for our design. Now let's go back to this original text here, and show you a couple other options you have. One, if you right or double click on it, you have the layer style properties. If you double click on an image, you also get these same layer styles. Now, you can add glows, you can add shadows, you can add overlays, and many other things. The particular two things you often will use is a color overlay. So again, this allows us to choose a color to overlay all of the color on the layer. So if this was multiple colors, it would actually become a one color based on whatever we want here. And again, we're going to use the eyedropper tool so we get the exact color we already have down here, which again is 100% magenta. Now, again, I'll show you why we use these to be 0 or 100%. If we click OK, down here you see our channels, which essentially are your print channels. And we're designing in CMYK. So as you can see, we aren't going to use cayenne, we aren't going to use yellow, and we're not going to use black. If we turn off some of these channels so that only the magenta is there, we easily can say, okay, that is the magenta color that needs to be screen printed, and it will have its own film positive printed just for that specific color. Again, it's a little bit more technical, but it's just very important to understand to work in CMYK. If you were to design everything in RGB and be completely finished, and you, again, weren't in CMYK, you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you. It's a mistake. Once you've made it, you will remember not to do it again. Okay, the other thing within layer styles, other than a color overlay, is a stroke. Now, a stroke essentially is an outline. As you can see, there's a very faint black outline here right now. Let's go ahead for now and make the color 100% cayenne because it's a pretty bright color. It'll be easy to see next to the magenta. And let's go ahead and increase our size, which is all based around the pixels. And for our example, let's go ahead and make this 15. And as you can see, now we have an outline around our text. Not very hard. And if we were to change this text, or if we were to change a warp or any other transformation, again, the outline will exist and it's all still editable. Now, because we have not rasterized this layer, we can change the text. Down here with soccer, this is rasterized. This word cannot be changed at all. That is again why we made our group, and we can go back and duplicate and make edits from there. All right, now let's go ahead and bring our image within our design. Bring an image in here, then Photoshop makes it very easy. You can drag and drop it right in, or you can come up to File and hit Place. Once you have your image placed on there, you can easily resize it. Again, we're holding Shift down to proportionately resize this soccer ball. Once we're happy with where it is, we can drop it. Now, I want it to be centered, so I'm going to hit Command A while I'm still on this, and I'm going to center it within the center of the canvas. Now, we are centered within the canvas here. Not sure if this text is here. Just in case, we'll bring it. And there we go. Now the Lakewood is actually proportional. Now, the Lakewood text is still, it's not rasterized, so it can be scaled. The soccer cannot be as much. So in our example, we're actually going to shrink the Lakewood text so that it's actually smaller. Now you have two different options. One, you can change it right here with the actual font, or might be a little bit easier is to come down to Transform, Scale, and again we're going to hold Shift, proportionally scale. And to make sure that we're the same size as up here, it's a good idea to bring it down here. See, we need to be a little bit bigger, and that'll look good. And we'll zoom back out, put it above the soccer ball, and come back to our alignment. Now, if we're happy with the size of everything, and again, this is a quick design, we can grab all of the layers at the same time by hitting Shift and grabbing all of them. And we actually come up to Edit, Transform, Scale, and actually scale these to become larger. And again, you can see we're keeping our proportionate. We are designing at a very high resolution. In our example, at 500 DPI. This is going to allow us to resize things without really losing a whole lot of image quality. And that's pretty much how you put together a simple design. Again, Photoshop will take time to master. You just have to play around with it. The more you use Photoshop, the easier it becomes. But it's very handy to know just what the main tools are that you're going to use. Again, on the sidebar, you're going to use the Move tool every time you open Photoshop. The Marquee and Lasso tool are great for grabbing or deleting. The Magic Wand tool is heavily used. The Eraser tool, the Paint Bucket tool, and the Text tool are a few others that you'll primarily use. Understand that Photoshop uses layers, and essentially you're ordering what artwork displays over another. Always design in CMYK color mode, and it's a good idea to have your history and character windows open so you can easily make adjustments. Hopefully you find this video helpful, and if you have any questions about how to create a simple design in Photoshop, please do not hesitate to contact us.